I never thought I would find my stepson's diary while cleaning out the attic. It was tucked inside the hidden pocket of an old suitcase, the kind of hard-shell luggage that probably hadn't been opened in 10 years. The cover of the diary was dark blue, worn soft at the corners, with a faded silver sticker peeling off the front. It had no name on it. That afternoon, Boston was soaked in rain. Tiny drops tapped against the slanted attic window, steady and quiet, like someone knocking with one finger. The air smelled of old wood, dust, and mothballs. I was kneeling on the floor in gloves, sorting through boxes of clothes, photo albums, expired documents, and the pieces of a life my husband had left behind. Richard had been gone for a year and a half. Still, every box felt like opening his coffin again. Richard Whitman had been my husband. He was 17 years older than me. Charming, polished, generous, and impossible to truly know. When I married him, he was 52 and I was 35. People said I had married well. They said I had gone from being a quiet assistant at a small art gallery to becoming Mrs. Whitman, the wife of a wealthy man with an old brick house near the Charles River. They called it luck. They called it a fairy tale. Only I knew there had never been anything simple or magical about that marriage. Richard was kind to me. He respected me. He never raised his voice, never embarrassed me in public, never made me feel small. But the largest place in his heart had always belonged to someone else. His son, Noah Whitman. My stepson, at least on paper. I met Noah after Richard and I were already engaged. He was 23 then, just back from Seattle, wearing a black jacket with rain on the shoulders and a cold expression that made the room feel 10 degrees cooler. He stood in the living room, looked at me for one brief second, and said, "Charlotte." Not Mom, not Mrs. Whitman, just Charlotte. To be honest, I was relieved. I had never wanted to be anyone's mother, especially not to a grown man only 12 years younger than me. For the next few years, Noah and I lived in the same house like two people sharing a long train ride. Polite, careful, distant. We sometimes ate breakfast in the same kitchen. Sometimes we passed each other in the hallway. Sometimes we talked about Richard's medication, doctor appointments, insurance calls, or whether the roof needed repairs before winter. Noah wasn't warm, but he was useful in a quiet way. He filled my car with gas when I forgot. He salted the front steps before snowstorms. If I worked late at the gallery, he left the porch light on. He never explained those things. He never asked for credit. And he never came too close. During the final 2 years of Richard's illness, Noah quit his job in Seattle and moved back to Boston. He spent his days between the hospital, the family office, and the house, carrying responsibilities that should have belonged to 3 people. That was when I realized he wasn't cold. He was contained. He had trained himself to bury everything beneath silence. After Richard died, the lawyer read the will in the dining room. The house was left to me. Most of the company's shares went to Noah. A trust was set up for both of us to manage together. On paper, it was elegant and fair. In reality, it left Noah and me alone inside a house that suddenly felt much too large. Something changed after that. I couldn't name it at first. The air between us became quieter, but heavier. Every ordinary thing seemed to carry meaning. The cup of coffee he left for me on the counter. The way he paused when I came downstairs. The way I became aware of his footsteps in the hallway before I even saw him. I told myself it was grief. I told myself the house was haunted by Richard's absence. I told myself a lot of things. Then I found the diary. I had only been trying to move one of Richard's old suitcases when the zipper caught on a loose seam. I tugged a little too hard, and the hidden pocket ripped open. The diary slid out and landed face up on the attic floor. I should have put it back. I know that now. But the page had fallen open, and right in the middle of it was my name. Charlotte wore the dark green sweater today. She thinks I don't notice when she stands by the kitchen window and stares into her coffee like she's trapped inside a dream only she can see. I wanted to ask if she was cold, but I don't have the right. My hand froze over the page. For a moment, the sound of the rain seemed to disappear. I told myself I would read only that paragraph, just enough to understand what I had accidentally seen. Then I would close the diary and put it back. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. Once a door opens, even slightly, it is hard not to look through it. I turned the page. When Dad married her, I thought she was just another woman who wanted the Whitman name. Young, beautiful, quiet, too polite to be real. Then I saw her crying alone in the hospital hallway after Dad fell asleep. She cried so softly, Like even her grief was trying not to bother anyone. I was standing by the vending machine with 2 coffees in my hand, and I didn't know whether to go to her. I didn't. I just left 1 coffee on the chair beside her and pretended I was walking past. She said thank you. She didn't know that was the first time I wanted to hold her. I slammed the diary shut. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The attic was cold, but my palms were sweating inside my gloves. I stared at the blue diary as if it were something alive. Noah had feelings for me. No, not just feelings. Those words were too careful, too restrained, too honest to be dismissed as a passing attraction. He hadn't written like a reckless boy. He had written like a man who had spent a long time fighting himself. I don't know how long I stayed there on my knees. Then the garage door opened downstairs. Noah was home. I shoved the diary back into the suitcase pocket with shaking hands and pushed the suitcase toward the wall. As I stood up, my knee hit the edge of a wooden crate, sending pain up my leg. Charlotte. His voice came from below. Low, calm, familiar. Are you up there? I closed my eyes and forced my voice to sound normal. In the attic. His footsteps came up the stairs. The old wood creaked under him, each step pressing against my nerves. When he appeared in the attic doorway, he was holding his car keys. His dark gray coat was damp from the rain, and his hair was wet at the ends. He looked at the boxes, then at me. Why are you moving this stuff by yourself? I was just sorting. His gaze dropped to my knee. You hurt yourself. It's nothing. He stepped closer and crouched, reaching as if to check the bruise. I moved back before I could stop myself. His hand paused in midair. The attic went silent. I saw something shift behind his eyes. Something small, but unmistakable. He withdrew his hand and stood. Sorry. The word was quiet. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What could I possibly say? That I wasn't afraid of his hand. That I was afraid of what I had read. That I was afraid of myself because my first reaction had not been discussed. That night, we had dinner together. Or rather, we sat at opposite ends of the same dining table and pushed food around our plates. The Whitman dining room was built for 12 people. A long polished table, crystal chandelier, silver candlesticks, too many empty chairs. When Richard was alive, it hosted lawyers, investors, art consultants, and old friends with expensive watches and practiced smiles. Now there were only 2 of us, and the room felt almost cruel in its emptiness. Noah cut his bread into neat pieces. His knife touched the plate with a soft sound. I stared at his hands and suddenly remembered the line in the diary. The first time I wanted to hold her. Heat rose to my face. I reached for my water and nearly choked. Noah looked up. You're strange tonight. I gripped the glass. Am I? Yes. I'm probably tired. His eyes stayed on me. Noah's eyes were pale gray, almost silver in certain light. He rarely stared at anyone for long, but when he did, it felt impossible to hide. Did you find something in the attic? My fingers tightened around the glass. Why would you ask that? He didn't answer right away. Then he set down his knife and fork. Because that old suitcase was mine. My heart missed a beat. Noah, you saw it, didn't you? I wanted to lie, but he looked too calm, almost as if he had been expecting this day for years. So I told the truth. I didn't mean to. I know. I saw my name. And then, I read a little. How much? I said nothing. The silence answered for me. Noah leaned back in his chair and rubbed a hand over his face. I thought that diary was still in Seattle. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. It's my fault. He lowered his hand and looked at me. I shouldn't have written those things down. And I definitely shouldn't have brought them back here. I heard myself ask, so it's true? His eyes didn't move from mine. Yes. One word. One simple word. And suddenly the whole room had no air left in it. I pressed my hands together beneath the table. Noah, I was your father's wife. Was. I'm also your stepmother. On legal documents. This isn't a word game. I know. His voice never rose. He didn't argue. He didn't push. Somehow that made it worse. If he had acted reckless, I could have rejected him easily. If he had sounded confused, I could have told myself he was mistaking gratitude for love. But he was too clear, too controlled, too aware of the damage this could do. This shouldn't have happened, I said. I told myself the same thing, he replied. Many times. I stared at him. When Dad was alive, I never crossed that line. You know that. I know. And after he died, I still didn't. I know. So you don't have to be afraid that I'll do anything. That sentence hurt more than it should have. Because I was not afraid Noah would hurt me. I was afraid because after reading that diary, I hadn't felt the horror I thought I should feel. I had felt shocked, confused, unsteady, and somewhere beneath all of that, a grief I could not explain. Grief that he had carried something so heavy alone. "What do you want now?" I asked. Noah was silent for a long time. The dining room clock ticked steadily, measuring every second between us. Finally, he said, "I'm moving out." I froze. "What?" "I found an apartment in Cambridge. It's closer to the office. Still close enough if anything in the house needs attention." He picked up his water, but didn't drink. "I was going to tell you next month." I couldn't speak. I had expected explanations. Maybe denial. Maybe some terrible confession. Maybe even a request. I had not expected him to leave. "Because of me?" I asked. "Because of myself." "Noah, I don't want to make you uncomfortable." He looked at me, his expression still calm, but his eyes darker now. "And I don't want this house to become a place where you feel you have to protect yourself from me." My throat tightened. "I don't feel that way." His mouth moved in something that was almost a smile. "You did in the attic." It landed softly, but it struck hard. I looked down. I was startled. "I know. I need time." "I know that too." Noah stood and took his plate to the kitchen. The light followed him, casting his tall shadow across the floor. I stayed where I was. When he came back, he stopped at the doorway. "You don't have to give me an answer," he said. "Actually, you don't owe me one at all." I looked up. He paused. "I didn't write those things so you would find them." Then he walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the rain, the old pipes, the faint creaks of the house settling around me. From the far end of the hall, I heard movement from Noah's room. He wasn't sleeping either. At 2 in the morning, I got up for water. As I passed the study, I saw a thin line of warm light beneath the door. Noah was at the desk, writing. The blue diary lay open in front of him. I should have gone back to my room. Instead, I pushed the door open. The hinge made a soft sound. Noah looked up, the pen still in his hand. "Sorry," I said. "I was just getting water. The kitchen is the other way." "I know." He didn't call out the lie. I stepped into the room and stood a few feet from the desk. "You're still writing?" "Yes." "What are you writing?" He closed the diary. "Nothing important. I've already read some of it." "That doesn't mean you're entitled to the rest." There was no anger in his voice, only exhaustion. I nodded. "You're right." He studied me for a moment. "Then what are you doing here?" I didn't know. Maybe I had come because he said he was moving out. Maybe because the thought of the house without him had made me feel suddenly, violently alone. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked. Noah looked down at the closed diary. "What would saying it have done? At least you wouldn't have had to carry it alone. Saying it would have destroyed more than silence did. So you chose to suffer quietly?" "I'm used to it." That sentence hurt. I remembered a night years earlier in the hospital. Richard had been asleep after a long, frightening procedure. I had stepped into the hallway because I couldn't breathe in that room anymore. Noah had been by the vending machine with 2 coffees. He hadn't said a word. He had simply placed one on the chair beside me and walked away. I thought it had been politeness. Now I understood it had been the safest form of care he could allow himself. "Noah," I said softly, "you don't have to move out." His fingers went still on the diary. "Are you sure?" "No." He looked at me. I gave a tired laugh. "I'm not sure about anything right now, but I don't want you to run because of me." "This isn't running." "What is it then?" "Damage control." The phrase was so cold, so practical, so like him, that it made my chest ache. "I don't want to be your damage." His face changed, just slightly. "You're not. Then don't treat yourself like a disaster I need to survive." He was quiet for a long moment. The lamp cast warm light over the desk, but his eyes looked like rain. "You won't lose me," he said. "I can leave and still take care of what needs taken care of." "That's exactly the problem." He frowned. "What? You think care means fixing things from a distance? Pipes, cars, roofs, trust accounts, my life." I swallowed. "But I'm not another thing Richard left behind for you to manage." For the first time, he looked truly shaken. I had touched something deep. "I know that," he said. "Do you?" He didn't answer. I stepped back toward the door. "Don't decide what protects me without asking me." Then I left him in the study. For the next week, we became painfully polite. Too polite. The kind of polite people are when they are trying not to bleed on the furniture. Noah left early in the mornings. He stopped lingering in the kitchen with his coffee. At night, he stayed in the study with work documents spread across the desk. If something in the house needed fixing, he fixed it and left a note. The basement valve was replaced. Have the heating company check the system tomorrow. No signature. But I knew his handwriting. I kept the note. I had no idea why. On Friday evening, the gallery hosted a small charity reception downtown. I didn't want to go, but my boss insisted several important collectors would be there. So I put on a black dress, pearl earrings, and the calm expression I used when I wanted people to think I was fine. At the reception, I ran into Martin Gray, one of Richard's oldest friends. Martin was in his 60s, silver-haired, rich in the effortless way old money always seems to be. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, complimented my dress, asked about the gallery, then casually asked how Noah was doing. He's well, I said. Martin smiled. He was always too serious. Richard used to say Noah acted 40 before he turned 25. I smiled politely. Then Martin tilted his head. You two are still living in the house together? My fingers tightened around my champagne glass. That was Richard's arrangement. Of course. His smile stayed friendly, but his eyes sharpened. Still, some arrangements are only meant to be temporary, Charlotte. You're young. Noah is young. People notice things. A chill moved through me. He knew nothing. And yet every word touched the exact place I was trying not to look at. I made some excuse and escaped to the terrace. Boston at night glittered under a thin veil of rain. The buildings shone in the wet streets. The Charles River looked black beneath the lights. I stood alone in the cold and suddenly couldn't breathe. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Noah's name. I didn't know why I wanted to call him. Maybe because whenever I felt the ground disappearing under me, he had become the person I reached for. The phone rang twice. Charlotte. His voice came through low and alert. My eyes burned. Are you busy? No. What happened? Nothing. There was a pause. Where are you? At the gallery reception. Have you been drinking? A little. What happened? I leaned against the cold wall. Martin asked if we still lived together. Noah said nothing. I whispered. He said people notice things. A slow breath came through the phone. What did you say? I said it was Richard's arrangement. Okay. Noah. I'm here. I hate the way they look at me. I know. But I hate even more that I'm scared they might be right. The words came out before I could stop them. Silence stretched between us. Then Noah said, Do you want me to come get you? No. Charlotte. I said no. You're shaking. I can hear it. I closed my eyes. Then come. 20 minutes later, he was outside. He stood at the gallery entrance in a black coat, holding an umbrella. The rain had softened the streetlights into gold. When I stepped out of the elevator and saw him waiting there, something inside me gave way. He didn't ask questions. He didn't crowd me. He was simply there. And that was exactly why he was dangerous to my heart. The ride home was quiet. Low jazz played through the speakers. The windshield wipers moved back and forth. Boston slid past US in blurred lights. Restaurants, bookstores, subway entrances, people hurrying under umbrellas. When we were almost home, I asked, Are you really going to move out? Noah kept his eyes on the road. If that's what you need. What if I don't need that? His hands tightened on the steering wheel for half a second. Then maybe I won't. Maybe. I don't want to misunderstand you. I don't understand myself. Then don't force yourself to. He said it so calmly, leaving me a way out as always. But instead of comforting me, it made my heart ache. He parked in the garage and turned off the engine. For a moment, neither of us moved. The car was dark except for the faint yellow overhead light. We sat side by side, close enough to hear each other breathing, separated by an armrest and years of history. I read the part where you said you wanted to hold me. I said. Noah closed his eyes. Charlotte, that was in the hospital hallway, wasn't it? Yes. Why didn't you? He turned his head toward me. In the dim light, his face looked tired and controlled. Because you were my father's wife. And now? He went still. I didn't know why I asked. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe Martin's words. Maybe every unsaid thing that had been pressing between us finally found a crack. Noah's voice was rough when he answered. Now you're still the woman my father loved. I let out a small, broken laugh. You're always so careful. I have to be. Why? Because if I make one wrong move, you're the one who gets hurt. The words pierced me quietly. I looked away. You always decide for me what will hurt. No, I don't. Yes, you do. The car fell silent again. After a while, I said, Noah, I'm not made of glass. I know. And I'm not a legacy Richard left behind for you to protect. This time, he didn't answer. I opened the car door and went inside. After that night, Noah stopped talking about Cambridge. But nothing became easy. We were like two people standing on opposite sides of a river, able to see each other clearly, but neither willing to step into the water first. Then, a few days before Thanksgiving, Richard's sister Elaine came to the house. Elaine had never liked me. She thought I was too young for Richard. She thought I had married him for his name, his house, his money. While he was alive, she had been polite enough to hide it. After he died, she didn't bother anymore. She entered the living room carrying an expensive leather bag and looked around as if inspecting a property she still believed belonged to her family. Her first words were, "You're still here." I set down my tea. "This is my home. This was my brother's home. It belongs to me now. Legally," she said, smiling thinly. Such a convenient word. Noah came downstairs just then. The moment he saw Elaine, his expression hardened. "Aunt Elaine." She turned to him, and her voice immediately softened. "Noah, darling, you look tired. I've been worried about you. This house is too much for you. You should move out and stop letting people who aren't your responsibility weigh you down." The room went still. I knew she meant me, and I knew that, once, I would have swallowed it. For Richard, for peace, for appearances. But that day, I was too tired to pretend I didn't understand. I stood. "Elaine, if you came here to insult me, you can leave." She blinked, then laughed. "Insult you? Dear, I'm only stating the obvious. You are a young widow with no blood connection to this family, living under the same roof as my nephew. People are already talking. Don't you care at all about the Whitman name?" My face went cold. Before I could speak, Noah's voice cut through the room. "Enough." Elaine looked at him. "I'm trying to protect you." "No," he said. "You're using that excuse to humiliate the woman who stayed with my father until the end." Her face tightened. "How dare you speak to me like that? Like an adult?" She drew herself up. "Noah, this woman is not family." Noah stepped down from the last stair and came to stand beside me. "That is not your decision." Elaine's eyes moved between us. Something sharp entered her expression. "So the rumors are true." My fingers curled. Before Noah could answer, I said, "No rumor is true." Elaine looked straight at me. "Then why do you look frightened?" "Because you're cruel." Her mouth twisted. "Charlotte, everything you have was given to you by my brother. Don't make the mistake of thinking you earned a place in this family." The words hit hard. But Noah spoke before I could. "She earned more than you ever saw." Elaine turned on him. "You're blinded by her." I reached for Noah's sleeve. Just a light touch. He looked down at me. I shook my head. Don't let her force this into the open. Not like this." He understood. His jaw tightened, but he faced Elaine again. "This visit is over. Your driver is outside. You're throwing me out?" "Yes." Elaine's face flushed with anger. She grabbed her bag, shot me one final look of disgust, and left. The door slammed behind her. The house went quiet. I let go of Noah's sleeve and realized my hand was trembling. He looked at me. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I'm just tired." He didn't push. He went to the kitchen, poured a glass of warm water, and brought it to me. When I took it, my fingers touched his. This time, I didn't pull away. Neither did he. That night, I went to the attic and found the blue diary again. I knew I shouldn't. I knew privacy, once violated, could not be repaired by violating it twice. But I couldn't stop myself. This time, I didn't open to the middle. I turned to the last page. The ink was fresh, probably written within the past week. Aunt Elaine came today. She said people would talk about Charlotte. I realized the cruelest part isn't that people might judge her. It's that I might actually become the reason they do. I love her, but if my love costs her peace, then it has no right to be spoken. I've contacted the New York office. After Christmas, I'll transfer there. The house stays with her. The cat stays with her. The roses in the garden stay with her. I'll only take the diary. The last sentence was written more slowly than the rest. If she ever loves someone else, I hope he loves her the way I do, but never makes her feel as trapped as I have. I stared at that line until the words blurred. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Then the tears came. Not because it was romantic, because I was terrified. Noah wasn't trying to claim me. He had already prepared himself to leave me, just so I wouldn't have to carry the weight of his feelings. And the moment I understood that, I finally understood something about myself. I was afraid he might actually go. That fear was clean and sharp. It left no room for denial. I didn't just rely on Noah. I didn't just feel safe with him. I didn't just want his quiet presence in the house because it made grief easier. I wanted him to stay. Maybe that answer wasn't neat. Maybe it wasn't easy. Maybe it wasn't the kind of thing people would ever understand over cocktails, in living rooms, or behind closed family doors. But it was real. I carried the diary downstairs. Noah was in the kitchen feeding the orange cat he had rescued months earlier from the porch. He had claimed he was only feeding it for one night. The cat never left. I named him Pumpkin. Pumpkin looked up when I entered, decided nothing interesting was happening, and went back to eating. Noah turned. When he saw the diary in my hand, his face changed. "Charlotte, you're going to New York?" His mouth tightened. "You read the last page." "Yes." "That wasn't meant for you." But I saw it. He was silent. I placed the diary on the counter between us. "When were you going to tell me?" "When it was finalized." "And then what?" "Leave me a note like you did with the basement valve." Something flashed across his face. "I didn't want to pressure you." "You think leaving wouldn't pressure me?" "At least then you wouldn't have to deal with this." "What is this?" His voice dropped. "Me." My heart broke a little at how quietly he said it. "Noah, you are not a problem." He looked at me like he didn't believe that. "You are not a mistake either," I said. The kitchen was warm. Rain slid down the windows. Pumpkin jumped onto a chair and flicked his tail lazily. Noah stood 2 steps away from me. He didn't come closer. He always did that. He always left the choice to me and took the burden for himself. I took a breath. "I can't give you a perfect answer tonight. I'm not asking for one. But I need to say this." His eyes shifted. "I'm listening. I don't know if what I feel is love. Not yet. I'm not going to use that word just because everything is intense right now. I don't know what happens next. I don't know what people will say. I don't know whether I'll be brave every day." He didn't move. "But I do know one thing." "What?" "I don't want you to leave." His expression cracked. "Just slightly. Not because I'm afraid to live in this house alone," I said. "Not because I need you to fix pipes, feed the cat, shovel snow, or take care of the trust. Because when I imagined you gone, the house didn't just feel empty." I swallowed. I felt empty. His throat moved. "Charlotte, let me finish." He went quiet. I looked down at the diary. I have trapped myself inside the role Richard left behind. His wife. Your stepmother. The quiet widow. The woman who should be graceful, grateful, and careful. But Richard is gone. I respect him. I'm thankful for what he gave me. But I can't spend the rest of my life as a monument to a marriage that has ended. Noah's eyes turned red. It was the first time I had ever seen him close to breaking. This man, who carried grief like furniture and never asked anyone to help, suddenly looked human in a way that made my chest ache. "You don't have to go," I said. "If you stay, we take this slowly. No pretending. No rushing. No crossing lines just because emotions are high. We figure out what is grief, what is habit, what is dependence, and what is real. What if we can't figure it out? Then we keep trying. What if the answer isn't what I hope?" I smiled through tears. Then at least we didn't let fear make the decision for us. Noah looked at me for a long time. Then he asked, "Can I hug you?" My heart shook. He asked so carefully, as if the hug were not an embrace, but permission to step inside a fragile room. I nodded. He came forward and wrapped his arms around me. He was warm and careful, so careful it made me want to cry harder. There was nothing desperate in it, nothing rushed, nothing that felt like taking. I leaned into him and heard his heartbeat. Fast. So he was afraid too. I closed my eyes and finally put my arms around him. That night, we did not say "I love you." We did not make promises. We stood in the kitchen and held each other until the rain stopped. Until Pumpkin got bored and brushed against our ankles. Until I understood that some relationships don't become clear all at once. They thaw slowly, like a river after winter. You can't force the ice to break. But you also can't pretend you don't hear the water moving underneath. Before Christmas, Noah canceled the New York transfer. He did not move out. He also did not move into my room. We stayed in opposite ends of the hallway. We made breakfast. We argued about who forgot to buy coffee beans. We watched bad movies and pretended to enjoy them. Life did not turn into a romance overnight. But something had changed. He stopped leaving before I came downstairs. I stopped pretending I didn't keep his notes. We started therapy. The first time we sat in the counselor's office, I was so nervous my palms were damp. Noah sat beside me, not too close and not too far. He didn't take my hand. He only pushed the tissue box toward me when I struggled to speak. The counselor asked, "What do you hope to get from this?" I looked at Noah. He looked at me. Finally, he said, "Honesty." I said, "And time." The counselor nodded. That is a good place to begin. For the first time in a long time, I believed that maybe beginning was possible. Spring came slowly to Boston. The trees by the Charles River turned green again. The roses Richard had planted years ago started pushing out new leaves in the garden. One Saturday, Noah and I worked outside together. He knelt near the flower bed with mud on his gloves, studying a half-dead rosebush as seriously as if it were a business contract. I stood beside him with a garbage bag full of dead branches. Pumpkin slept on the porch in the sun. "Can this one survive?" I asked. Noah examined it. "Yes." "You're sure?" I looked it up. "When?" "Last night." I laughed. "You researched roses?" He looked up at me, completely serious. "They were Dad's." My laughter softened. For a second, I worried that his words would hurt. But they didn't. "Things that are left behind don't always have to be chains," I said. Noah looked at me. Then he smiled. A small smile. Almost private. That evening, we sat on the porch with coffee. The sky was streaked with pink and orange. Across the street, a child rode a bicycle through a puddle, laughing when water sprayed up behind the tires. Noah sat beside me, half an arm's length away. He didn't touch me. I didn't move closer. But the distance no longer felt painful. It felt like a promise. Slowly. Honestly. No running. No forcing. No erasing the past. And no letting the past swallow the future. "I burned the diary," Noah said suddenly. I turned to him. "When?" "Last week." "Why?" He looked out at the garden. "Because I don't want to live through things I'm too afraid to say anymore." My heart shifted. "Do you regret it?" "No." He paused. I kept the last page. "Why?" His eyes met mine. "To remind myself that loving someone doesn't only mean wanting to be close. Sometimes it means making sure they can still breathe." I looked down as my eyes stung. After a long silence, I asked, "Do I still make it hard for you to breathe?" Noah didn't answer right away. The last light of the day softened his face. "No," he said. "Now I'm waiting for you." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." I laughed quietly. "You always say things that are impossible to respond to. You don't have to respond." "What if I want to?" He went still. I placed my hand on the wooden bench between us. I didn't touch him. I just left it there. A few seconds later, he looked down. Then he slowly reached over and held my fingertips. His hand was warm. Mine was cold. We didn't kiss. We didn't say anything dramatic. We just held hands for a while, like two people finally willing to admit they were standing on the same road. People still talked. Elaine never came back to the house, but she made sure her opinions traveled through relatives. At the gallery, a few people looked at me with questions they were too polite to ask. I had once thought that would destroy me. But when it finally happened, I learned something surprising. The hardest thing was not facing other people's judgment. The hardest thing was facing my own heart. Once I stopped lying to myself, the outside noise became quieter. Noah and I did not rush to name what we were. We lived. We went to therapy. We turned the old house from a museum of Richard's memory into a home for the people still alive inside it. We repainted the guest room ceiling where it had water stains. We replaced the cold crystal chandelier in the dining room. We sold the long 12-person table and bought a round oak table for 4. I planted basil and rosemary on the kitchen windowsill. Noah rebuilt the front porch. Pumpkin gained weight and claimed the living room sofa as his personal kingdom. There were no fireworks. No dramatic speeches. No perfect ending wrapped in music. Real life was quieter than that. It was coffee in the morning. A note on the counter. A hand offered without pressure. A door left open. One Sunday, I woke to the sound of the coffee machine downstairs. I put on a robe and walked into the kitchen. Noah was standing at the stove, making eggs. Morning light came through the window and rested on his shoulders. It was such an ordinary sight, so painfully ordinary, that my eyes filled with tears. He heard me and turned. "Morning, morning." He handed me coffee. I took it, and our fingers touched. This time, neither of us pulled away. I stood by the kitchen window and looked out at Pumpkin stretching on the porch, the roses opening in the garden, sunlight spreading across the floor. And I thought of the last sentence in Noah's diary. If she ever loves someone else, I hope he loves her the way I do, but never makes her feel as trapped as I have. I used to think that sentence was goodbye. Now I know it was a door. Noah had handed the choice back to me. And when I walked through that door, it wasn't because I was lonely. It wasn't because I was grateful. It wasn't because I was swept away by something forbidden and dramatic. It was because after a long silence, I finally heard my own heart clearly. It said, "Don't let him go." So I didn't. And he stayed.